In the world of Black Clover, there are nobles and peasants. There are weak and there are strong. The classism in Black Clover is an evident part of the world, and of course we see characters such as Asta, Fuegoleon, and even the Wizard King himself, Julius, all fight against and hope to establish a more fair and equal status quo. That being said, while many royals are fine with the current way of the world, there are those who have to live on the harsher side of things. Take the members of the Black Bulls. Even royals with seemingly not as impressive magic are shunned, so it would make sense that there would be those who would want to take matters into their own hands, and not even to necessarily change the status quo, but change themselves so they can't be looked down upon, and would do so by any means necessary. And if one were looking to gain power by any means necessary, they might draw inspiration from Asta, in exactly the wrong way from how he'd hoped to inspire others. Enter the Devil Banisher arc. This arc takes place after the Elf arc, and more specifically, after Damnatio Kira tries to use Asta and Seker as scapegoats for the Devil Zagre's actions, as Asta himself was already possessed by a devil, and Seker was cursed via the effects of forbidden magic. Though in the end, such ruling was overturned in favor of sending the Black Bulls abroad to investigate the devils. Though our arc starts with a coalition of individuals headed by members of Damnatio's court, who weren't pleased with the ruling. This group would be known as the Devil Banishers, and would have the goal to take the destroying of the devil possessed into their own hands. Though later in the arc, conspirators with different motives would expose themselves, as not those with the intentions of banishing devils, but those who seek to acquire the power of devils themselves. These conspirators were spurred to action after the effects of the Elf arc, same as the Banishers, but their end goal was not to wipe out the devils, but acquire their power, the same as Asta. After all, if a commoner with no magic at all could become as powerful as he did with the devil's power, that meant they could possibly achieve something similar through the contract with the devil. And with said power, they'd take revenge on those who looked down upon them. This group would be known as the Devil Believers, headed by Dazu Tayak and Bo Note. Their plan was to use the 5-leaf Grimoire and Seker as offerings to the Spade Kingdom in order to be granted Devil's power. Though, the arc ended with the Magic Knights protecting and talking to commoners the Devil worshippers recruited on their march to the Spade Kingdom, convincing them that the Magic Knights were for the people regardless of their class, and that they'd do anything they could to help them. All they asked for was some time. The people would be convinced and turn back to the Clover. Though the main 5 headers of the worshippers were exiled, they would tell the Clover Knights that if they didn't make true change, others like them would arise. And then, walking to the snow, no offerings, no armies, but venturing forward anyway. The arc spans 7 episodes from 142 to 148, and sounds like a pretty good basis for a story. With how we know the world works and how the people are treated, of course people would be vying for a devil's power, especially concerning commoners in the Clover who know of Asta, so it makes sense to delve into this type of plot. I even like the end where the Magic Knights just talked to the people to assure them that they were on their side. And yet, there is a fatal flaw regarding the execution of this great concept that really drags the arc down, that being that the antagonists are terrible. They suck. And I know they aren't supposed to be some striking villains or anything. They're ordinary common folk. But that is the point. If the whole point of the arc is that these people are willing to kill and lie and kidnap children and commit treason, all rooted from their anger towards being mistreated, show me an actual example of actions that would push them this far. They are genuine criminals, and the events that push them are not adding up at all. Like, the civilians that joined the Believers on their way to the Spade, they're fine, they were joined in last minute. But the main 5, specifically Bo and Dazu, mostly Dazu though, I hate because the reasons are shown are not good. For Bo, it's like, oh, I have a little magic power that some people look down on, so I just use it for medicines and alchemy. It's nothing special. And she talks vaguely about looking down upon. She doesn't even get a flashback or anything though. Though, if she's anything like Dazu, I'm sure I have room to dislike her even more. You know why I hate Dazu as an antagonist? Because I'm fully convinced she's just stupid and the worst. Why? It's because of the reasons we see her become the jaded individual she is in this arc. Specifically, getting slightly teased as a child, and being in an unhappy passive-aggressive marriage. Those are the reasons we get for her becoming willing to murder people. Let me be more specific. The flashbacks we see regarding Dazu involve her as a child overhearing some girls laugh about how they only play with her because they were put up to it by an adult, and then laughing at her because her magic was weak. And then, her main motivator for becoming this way being her husband and his mother. Basically, she feels trauma from those two looking down upon her and using her as a way to make themselves feel better about their lives. To be honest, I didn't even believe that this was actually happening until the end of the last episode of the arc, where we saw in a flashback he straight up called her a good-for-nothing wench. That being said, I shouldn't not believe until the end of the arc. In fact, they could have even showed that earlier at the beginning.
Okay, so in the sub, he says, "You stupid," and then calls her a good-for-nothing wench. In the English dub, he says, "Come on, Dazu." I don't know why the second part was silenced, if not to give the illusion that it wasn't a miserable marriage. Though even with that, it still doesn't change my stance from what is said in the video.
I still don't feel bad though, because she could have just not married him, or left him. This wasn't a forced thing or anything. She didn't have to marry him. She wasn't being forced, and she wasn't afraid that he was going to hurt her. In fact, she gets a scar on her arm from her husband and his mother getting her to use her magic. She says that they were hoping for her to fail the whole time and to use as a symbol for what she went through. But I don't feel bad for her and her little dingy scar. It ain't even bigger than a toothpick. And before anyone at all tries to defend her, remember she was willing to kill, kidnap children, and commit treason before she was willing to just walk away from a passive-aggressive relationship. Which was all it was. It wasn't even overtly mean, just passive-aggressive and mocking silence. She had no reason to be afraid. She could have just left. And yet, she literally watched the light fade from this man's eyes. I think she genuinely is just cuckoo. And you could say that there could be more instances of more overt discrimination, but considering the fact that we didn't see anything of the sort, can only lead me to the conclusion that being teased by children as a child herself, and a chosen life of passive aggressiveness, were all it took for this woman, and that's what her entire cause is built upon. It cheapens the whole thing, to be honest, because the motive can be simple but still compelling. But if it is stupid, it makes everything up until finding that out also feel stupid. That's how I feel about this arc. Try going back real quick to go over some parts in an episode of the arc to glean some information. I found myself literally just being annoyed listening to Dazu complain like she had been through the great trials of life when she was just talking about a marriage she could have left or said no to. And yeah, could have been other stuff. Could have. But when you give me crap, what else am I supposed to base my thinking off of? And I just generally was not the biggest fan of her and Bo. The only people that really mattered too. The other three worshippers, no one even cares about. I don't remember their names. So yeah, that's one of Black Clover's most promising arcs conceptually. But through actual execution, it sucked. Because its antagonists sucked. And they were insufferable. Anyway, have a good one. Peace.